All right, good morning. We're gonna do a little bit of work on the van today. A couple of things that we're gonna try and accomplish is solve that age-old issue of how do you get up in the van. Right now, we don't have anything such as a side step on the van. And I never really think about that kind of stuff because I'm so tall, so stepping into things is not an issue for me, but it is for everybody else. So our solution to that was Flatline FVCO makes a really nice step. It's a full length step on the passenger side, and then a driver's door step with a I guess more like a rock slider rail to finish out the other side. And so that's what we're going to do today. These came in the mail. So it comes in 3 boxes. You have the rails for passenger and the driver's side, and then you have the hardware kit that's got all the mounting stuff. So this project does take a little bit of DIY effort. So you have to have some tools, you have to have a drill and drill bits, socket set, and then because they use riv nuts, you have to have a riv nut tool as well. And we'll show you what all that looks like once we get it open. If this is something you're interested in, please stick around for the video. All right, welcome to another episode of The Road Ahead, where Emily and I are fixing up our 2019 Sprinter van, which was an old Amazon van, so that we can use it for vacations and travel and just about anything else that we would like to do. So we've done quite a bit to the van. I have documented that fairly extensively in some of the other episodes. So this one is going to be about installing the side steps from Flatline FVCO. So we're pretty excited about that. She's excited about that because she is a little bit shorter than I am, and sometimes has a little bit of trouble stepping up into it. So we're going to solve that today. So we'll go ahead and open these boxes up and kind of show you what's inside. So the first thing you'll see is that they are not a single piece design. They do that so that they can ship them. And you can see this is the passenger side where the sliding door is, and then that's for the driver's side door, and that's that extra rail. So they come together with some sleeves and plates, and then there's quite extensive bracketry that mounts underneath to the bottom of the van through the pinch weld, but bolts to the body and the body support mounts as well. So you get everything you need with the exception of the drill bits, socket set, and the riv nut gun. There's only a few riv nuts that need to go in. Everything else kind of uses self-tapping screws and a whole hardware kit full of supplied bolts. So we'll pull all that out together. We'll do some of the assembly, and then we'll look at how the bracketry needs to go together. Like I said, this is not a super easy install. There has to be some measuring. You do have to drill some holes, and that measuring has to be pretty precise for where those bracket locations are for the support brackets for the actual step itself. But easy stuff. It just takes time, and we'll go through it one step at a time. All right, so this first step, we got to take some sleeves and put them together. We're going to use some 1/4-20 hex head bolts, and then some of the 3/8 inch cap screws that we're going to use to fasten things together. And I'll show you, the instructions are halfway decent, so I'll show you what that picture looks like. So that's basically what we have to do, is use these sleeves to kind of put the 2 pieces together. And then there's some angle brackets right there that will allow us to firm up the structure. The rest of the structure of the step will be tied together with the brackets that actually mount to the van itself. So we're going to knock out that passenger side rail first, because that's what we're going to put on the van first. So this piece just slides into here, and we'll flip this over so you can We're also going to use some blue Loctite for all of these bolts. All right, so you can see this is just in here loose, and then we've got these started, and then we're just going to slide this piece together, and then the bracket goes on the outside. So for the passenger side, they also include 2 extra 1/4-20 bolts with lock nuts and washers that go right there, so that plate can pull together. So we'll get those installed, and then we'll start tightening everything up. All right, with all that together, we tightened these first to make sure that we were nice and tight and level. Then we tightened the sleeve for here, and then we tightened the weldment joint with these screws. All used at impact. There's no torque spec that they have for it. The driver's side is exactly the same, with the exception that it doesn't have the piece in the middle, because you're only really stepping on that spot where, meaning that it doesn't have this piece, because you're only really stepping on the spot with the where the step is underneath the driver's door. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and put the driver's side together, and then we'll start looking at what's necessary for the brackets. So they also provide, so these side steps mount to different vehicles with different configurations and different lengths, and so they have some universal points to them, and for those that aren't used, they provide hardware to seal them up. So you'll notice that there are holes on the bottom, and then I have 2 of the bolts in place right now, and what they provide is another hex head bolt with a rubber and steel covered washer, and you just basically put some Loctite on the bolts that are provided, and close all those up, and that way water and mud and stuff doesn't get in that space. So we'll do that real fast. All right, so that gets that done. You can see that it just fills all those in. That's a nice touch, you know. They could have certainly left those open, but understanding that that just creates a space for water and dirt and grime, and it's nice of them to put that stuff in. So far everything is bolted up the way I expected it to. So now we got to get under the van and start measuring, but we'll bring the brackets out and kind of show you what they look like real fast. All right, so all the brackets come stamped with a passenger side and a driver's side, which is great, so that if you ever had to do something like this and you're trying to figure out which bracket goes on which side, it's not just and a lot of places just put stickers on them, the stickers fall off. These are actually stamped and embossed in the brackets themselves. So you can see P1 for passenger 1, passenger 2, passenger 2, driver 1, driver 2, driver 2, signifying the different bracket placements to provide structure for the step, so it's nice and solid. These brackets are the ones that fit up underneath the pinch weld, and then up along the body of the van to give some structure there as well. So I'll show you how that fits up, and then we'll talk real brief about how to make the measurements. They gave a nice diagram that shows you exactly where to measure for everything, so you know exactly where the placement of those brackets is supposed to go. So if you're underneath your van and you look at this bracket, you can see there's a slot right there that fits underneath the pinch weld. The pinch weld is this piece right here, and so the bracket, as you can see, has a slot, and it fits right up in there. We got 2 screws that got to go through the pinch weld, and then 2 that go into the body, and then the mount actually mounts directly to that face. So it's actually a pretty slick design. So it uses the strength of the pinch weld for the vehicle, which is where the 2 pieces of the body come together, and then it goes into the body itself, and then we have those long arms which provide some actual other structural support to make sure that step is nice and solid. So I'm really happy with the quality of the kit. The packing was great, nothing came damaged. FedEx is unfortunately a little rough on packages, but they use really nice cardboard, so everything came undamaged, and so I was really happy about that. A lot of times the boxes are pretty flimsy and stuff comes and the boxes are falling apart, not these. So they did a really good job with getting it here. So let's break out the diagram and I'll show you how we're gonna have to measure. They give you specific measurements from a central point. So there is a jack point on the body itself, and that is 0. So that's the 0 mark. And then the brackets are spaced out every so often based on of how the van is constructed to where the bracket goes in the best spot. And all you have to do is measure directly to the lines that they tell you and make a mark, and then the bracket is centered on that mark. So those are center line measurements. So the first one on the passenger side is going to be 12 13/16 from that jack point, and then the next one is 51 1/4, 71 5/16, and then 112 5/16. And they even tell you which bracket goes where. So if you notice, there's the short version and then the long version, and then on their diagram, or the tall version, they give you an S and a T to let you know where those brackets are supposed to go. So measuring is easy, so I'm going to go ahead and measure all of the brackets so I know exactly where they need to go and mark them with a Sharpie, and then we'll back to kind of show you how they're installed. They use 4 self-tapping screws on each one that goes into the body. So it's a pretty simple installation. I got all the measurements done, and I'll show you the picture and then we'll get underneath. So you can see almost, there's the jack point right there, and you want to go on the outside, which is going to be the side closest to the front tire. And I'll show you where that is real quick. So if you choose to do this, you'll know where to go. So this is the jack point. You can see the mud flap in the front tire, and you want to measure from the outside edge. So this is 0 here. So if you're jacking your sprinter van up, this is where Mercedes wants you to put the jack. The brackets are what come next, and it's a pretty simple setup where you have these front 2 spots go through that pinch weld, and then underneath those 2 spots are go up into the body, and they just use self-tapping screws. So we'll go ahead and mark this in the right location and get them installed, and then we'll come back when we're done. So I got the 4 brackets on the passenger side put in with 2 of the self-tappers up underneath into the unibody structure. And so what that allowed me to do is to look at where we come to the pinch weld. So Flatline Van Co suggests pre-drilling a pilot hole in that bracket in order to make sure the self-tapper goes where you want it to go. And so what we did was, after all the brackets were installed, we used a step drill and just went in through that first the first dip, which is like an 1/8, and that's perfect for these self-tappers. So we'll put the rest of the 4 in, and then we're ready to test fit the step for the first time. So I've got it in place, sitting on a jack, which is pretty handy because it's only just me. But look how nice that looks. So you got a nice step for the passenger door, and then a full step where the slide is going to be. And the first thing we're going to do is mount this to the 4 brackets that we just put on the van, and then we'll connect the long brackets to go to the frame. So that's just easy, 2 bolts each bracket, and we'll Loctite them and secure them in place. But we'll fit everything loose first before we tighten anything down to make sure everything fits. Forgot, so they provide some spacer brackets that need to go between the step and the bracket in the van. And the reason for that is, if you look here on the one that's not installed, there are nut inserts, and what that does is it takes up the space. You can see how they stick out. This plate takes up the space between the actual step and where the nuts are inserted into the step, so that there's no gap when you put everything together. So everything flush mounts nice and flush. Again, a really nice detail by them. All right, so the next step in this, to get the brackets, there are 3 on each side. They use what's called a plus nut. And what this does is it slides into a hole, and then you use a tool like that to compress this part and sandwich it between the 2 metal surfaces. So this becomes the edge of the bottom, and then this pulls down and mushrooms down to make a secure nut threaded insert. So there are 3 sections on the frame that you have to use these nut inserts. It does require a tool, and they mark them pretty clearly in the directions, and I'll show you where they are. So you don't have, on the passenger side, you don't have to drill any holes. You just basically put these in and then use the tool to compress that sleeve. And basically what happens is you thread the top part into the plus nut, and then you squeeze the handles down, and that pulls it toward it, and it pulls it nice and tight so you can thread something up in there. So I use plus nuts, which is a different form of the riv nut, in the van extensively, which is why I have the tool. But it really makes for a good fastening solution when you can't get to the back to put like a full nut and bolt in. All right, we got it installed. I think it looks really good. And it's nice and solid, and I weigh 240 pounds, so I'm pretty happy with it. I'll show you all the bracketry. I didn't tape video any of that, just because it's brackets and bolts, and the instructions are pretty clear, but we'll get underneath there and take a look. All right, so you can see the bracket there. Then here are the big ones, and they go from there all the way up to the frame. And provide all that structure. Now I got a lot of other stuff going on down here. I have my diesel heater and an air line that I'm fitting in, so I had to move some brackets and stuff around to get the muffler and exhaust pipe straight. And I got this tied up for my air compressor that I just haven't got fixed yet. So all in all, it went really well. It does take a little bit of time. You do have to be patient, and it is not a simple bolt right up, but it does work. And everything fit just the way that it's supposed to. So if you follow the instructions, you follow those measurements, and you measure accurately, everything's going to line right up. I didn't have to move or change or manipulate anything. Everything just kind of, and I'm going to call that luck, not skill. That everything fit. For all the years that I've been doing this, very rarely do you find a product that actually bolts right up. Usually you've got to do some work to get it where you need it to be, but this install went really well, and I'm really happy. So I'm going to move the van and do the other side. I'm not going to tape any of that, just simply because it's the repeat of the passenger side, with the exception of the holes that are in the body on the passenger side that took those riv nuts are not on the driver's side, so you have to drill those out. We'll drill a pilot hole, drill them out to the size of the riv nut, and then put them in. And so I'll show you that once I get to that point. All right, so we've got a bunch accomplished. You can see the step is on. And so those brackets I was telling you about where we have to drill holes, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So that front bracket had a place for the riv nut, so that's in place. This one we have put in place, and I made a mark right there, and we'll drill a hole. And then we did the other one, so the other support comes from here up, and you can see where we got to drill a hole right there for the riv nut. What we're looking for is something that'll fit the diameter of the riv nut, and based on the instructions, that is a 17-30 seconds is what size we need to get to. So we're going to use a step bit to get to that, and that they're just easier to drill with. If you haven't seen a step bit before, it's what I showed you a little while ago, but they are the easiest way to drill into metal because it takes out just a little bit of steel at a time, and they look like that. Now this is a small one. I've got a bigger one to finish it out, but they come in all sizes. I buy Irwins from Lowe's or Home Depot, and they work really good. So we'll get those drilled in and the brackets in, and then I'll show you what everything looks like when we're done. So happy with it so far. All right, well, that's it. So we got it finished. I think that looks pretty good. Perfect for when you open the door. You got a good step, and then you have, these are little raised, so you have a place to scrape your feet if you need to. But this is nice tubing, and then it accents around to the back. And the reason they leave a space right here between there and there is if you want to put a ladder up, because a lot of people put ladders on the side. You know, that's an option, you know, depending on which way you go. But, and then here's this side. So that's the Flatline FVCO Sprinter 170 side steps. The project took me about 3.5 hours on my back in the driveway. On a lift, I think you can probably do it in the time that they say you could do it, which is about 2 hours. But I really like the way the look of it is. Once we get the tires on here, which will give us a little bit of a wider stance, I think it's really going to look nice. And Emily's going to be super happy because she has a step to get up in either the driver or the passenger seat, and then a step to get into the van itself. So I think it's worked out pretty well. If we're parked in a parking lot and someone opens their door next to the van, it's going to hit these bars rather than hit the van. So to me, I like it. So a couple cool things yet to come. We also ordered a rack for this side where we're going to put boxes and bike rack, so that should be coming soon. And then we'll do an update video. I got some lights coming, some reverse lights, and some rock lights to go on the passenger side, so we can light that whole area up underneath the van at camp. And we're going to plug that into our Garmin switch, which we did in the last video. So hope you guys got something from the video. Sorry it's so long, but and I didn't get to the every little piece of the install of it, but I hope you guys got the gist of it. This is Dan from Rambling Ambition. If you liked what we're doing, please consider subscribing. Give us a thumbs up. And I have affiliate links in the description, so if you want to buy any of the tools or any of the things that we bought, please consider clicking on those links. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does help me out a little bit. So again, this is Dan from Rambling Ambition, and we'll see you next time.